All right, we are live, not from New York. Take it away, Evan.
Maybe someday.
Yeah, there's yeah, I could definitely do it. All right, well, see, we were talking before the show, like that Evan was gonna MC this one, but he actually hasn't introduced the show yet, so I'm gonna do it.
That's true.
I'm gonna make it happen.
I thought you were going to do this part until you were going to throw it to me when we were actually ready to start, but
we still haven't introduced the show.
That's true. Maybe we should do that.
This is the World Club of the Week, and this week we have a team who I'm probably going to butcher their names, but I'm going to go with Ceres-Negros. I'm pretty confident in the Negros. I don't know actually why that it's Negros. I realize as I say it out loud, but yeah, Ceres-Negros, they are a Filipino team. And so our format, when we don't have a guest, as previous listeners will know, is that we just sort of like have a series of questions that we kind of interview the other hosts. So this was my pick. So I'm going to let Evan begin the interview of me. Right. Actually, I'm not going to let Evan do that. I'm gonna say that the reason I'm wearing this ridiculous hat is primarily because I was going to get a hat, and this was in the closet with the rest of the hats, and that's you don't exist. Go away. He's my Wendy's parents' cat, actually. He's not really supposed to be here. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh yes, it was with the other hats, and then it dawned on me that we're going to take December off. We're going to do the winter break thing. And so I decided I would wear this hat today because today is as good as not. The thought did occur to me. Maybe I could do it like after Thanksgiving, like a show that we record. Yeah, like it's still in November, but after Thanksgiving. Yeah. But I just like, what are the chances of me remembering that?
Probably not very high.
Yeah, so I just decided I'm gonna wear it today. And it's whatever. I'm wearing a t-shirt, so I needed to sort of like compensate for the warmth of that. But anyway, now that I've explained my ridiculous hat, Evan is going to begin his interview with me.
All right. So as Doug said, he chose a Filipino club. So Doug, why don't you tell us why you chose this specific Filipino club?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I think it was largely I wanted to do a Filipino club. That was the main thing that I was looking at. Asian Cup just finished yesterday. Qatar won 3-1, which we're not going to talk about that, but just in case, there's this thing called the Asian Cup that Asian teams participate in, kind of like the Gold Cup in the U.S. or the Euros. I don't even know what it's called. The Copa Libertadores is what's popping in my head. What's it? South America.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the club one, the Copa Libertadores. But whatever, the South American one. They have all the continents have it. This is the Asian one. But anyway, I'm sort of picking places where they speak Spanish, and in the Philippines, they don't actually speak a lot of Spanish. There's some Spanish heritage, but I found out that like 0.5% of the population actually speaks Spanish. I was going to do a club from a region where they speak a Spanish Creole, but there was like no information on them. And they're kind of not a big deal, I guess, that club. And then I had Andre Zlakowski. Actually, that might be right. Zlakowski. Zlakowski. Andre, I probably got. He suggested on the BBC World Football Phone-In Facebook page that this club would be a good Filipino club to pick. So I started looking into it, and I was like, oh, yeah, actually, that's a good one to pick. So I'm just going to do that. Spanish connections or not, we're going to do this one.
All right. Sounds good. So tell us a little bit more about this club. More currently, how are they doing now, or how did they do their last season? Are they a top team, low team, first division, second division? What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so they are the current holders, and they're actually two-time holders of it's not, now that I'm looking at this, I don't know that this is the Filipino. It's called the Philippines Football League on Wikipedia, but the league in the Philippines has like folded a whole bunch of times. I actually didn't think they had a top division for a while, but then it was pointed out that they do have a new top division, but they've won the league, whatever the thing is that is the top division in the Philippines, 2017, 2018. They also won it in 2015. The United Football League Division 1, which I think is the top division. I don't think they do the like thing like in England where they like League One is actually the third league. I don't think they do that. And they were runners up in 2016, and they won the second division. Again, I don't know if that's actually like what's called Division 2. I don't know if that's the second tier or what, but Philippines, large population, but not a huge footballing nation. So I kind of suspect that they don't have like lots of leagues. But they won that in 2014, got promoted to Division 1, immediately won that division. So, you know, they came from sort of, I guess, humble beginnings to a certain extent. So the new season starts March 2019. And this is, I guess we'll talk a little bit more about their international successes later. But they're currently the 48th ranked team in Asia. And I was like, well, that sounds pretty good. Asia is a big continent. And so, but I was like, what does that really mean? I mean, I was like, okay, China clubs are probably good. Japan and Korea, what's after that? I don't really know. So I looked at it in Europe to compare. And I saw that KAA Ghent, which is a Belgian club, they're the 48th ranked team in Europe. And I was like, well, Ghent, who are they? I've heard of them, but I hear of a lot of things. So, the like, I venture to guess the average football fan doesn't really know anything about Ghent. Well, I don't know anything about Ghent. I just know that they exist. So I was like, well, that's kind of not that great. But then I started looking into it a little bit more. I noticed that Inter Milan was 55, Valencia, the Spanish club, is 60th, and AC Milan is 76th. So I was like, well, actually, 48th is those are some big name clubs that are below them. And I also, it's not. Eventually, we'll get to Malmo, and I'll talk about like my fandom of the Swedish club in Malmo. But they're ranked 72, which is like ridiculous that Malmo is ranked higher than AC Milan. That to me was just ridiculous. So that's enough about the European side. But I thought that Asia not as good. I think it's safe to say the Club World Cup certainly bears that out, that like no Asian team has ever won the Club World Cup. But so Asian football not as good as European football, but it should give some perspective of what 48th actually means. I mean, they're certainly on the Asian stage a respectable club. So
yeah, and I will point out that in the Belgian league there are two teams. There is Ghent, and then there is Genk, if I am pronouncing that right. And so, even if you've heard of one, you might have thought you heard the other one. And I was just trying to pull up some history here. They've both won the league relatively recently, like in the last decade. So might have them confused. I didn't know there was two of them. So, yeah. So moving on here. So that's kind of how they are now. Can you tell us a little bit about like how they came to be? Are we talking about a club that's been around a while, or are they relatively new to the scene?
Yeah, they're a pretty new club. I don't know how it compares to like the rest of the Philippines. I suspect that a lot of these teams were founded fairly recently to sort of build up the league in the Philippines. But 2012, I believe. Yeah, 2012 is when they were founded, and then they were founded by a guy named Leo Ray Janssen, and the team was just it was college players and some Koreans. I'm gonna say probably a step up from the NPSL, for those familiar with the U.S. League. But the collegiate players thing makes me think sort of an NPSL level. But if they've got they're bringing in professional Koreans. Maybe we're talking about the very top tier of the NPSL, like the Miami clubs or some of the teams that are winning national championships. Maybe we're talking about that level of the NPSL. Certainly, maybe the bottom levels of the USL too. But just as far again, thinking about on the Asian perspective. But now, of course, they've got they're fully professional. A lot of members of the Filipino national team. And one other thing about the club is that they've changed names. Actually, if memory serves, they've changed the name a couple times, but they were the Ceres-Negros Football Club for a bit. So if you're reading things from years ago about the club, then Ceres-Negros is the club that's now known as Ceres-Negros. So,
all right, well, good stuff. Good stuff. I was just thinking here, we don't really do this, and this because it does change depending on what country you live in. But maybe were you able to find, or did you look into like any kind of video or any kind of way to watch them play?
I didn't. I mean, they're going to be a lot of times, I guess, in either the Asian Champions League or I think it's just called the AFC Cup, if memory serves, which is basically their NIT. So those games are going to be easy, air quotes, to find in the U.S. On the internets, they're going to be easy to find. So that would be one way to watch them. But as far as watching the Filipino League, it's probably not going to be easy. It's all going to be in not English for one thing, but yeah. Well, yeah. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe it could be in English, but I'm doubtful.
Yeah, I just didn't know. If I hadn't tried it in the past to be like looked up YouTube highlights or anything on any of these teams that we've really done. I imagine of the ones that we've done, this one would be the hardest to potentially find. But just something to think about as we move forward.
Well, I mean, you're probably right, but some of the lower leagues, they want people to see the games and they want to build momentum for their players. So like with the NPSL, a lot of those games are free on the internet. And I think the USL games, a lot of those are free on the internet too. So in that respect, although there could be like country blocking or stuff at the USL level, but I'm pretty sure that like for the NPSL games that are online, they're just online and like anybody can go watch them. So it's actually going to be pretty easy if you know English and if you're following that club to like actually find the link, because a lot of time, sometimes I guess, and it comes and goes too, because like a lot of the Minneapolis City games, they'll go into a stadium, that stadium doesn't have Wi-Fi, and then those games aren't broadcast, like when they're away games, and I'm not going to go to the away game. I will look for a stream to watch it. I'll just follow the MPLS City. Mm-hmm. I follow their Twitter feed, and sometimes it's just like there's no feed. So you win some, you lose some, I guess, with the stadium Wi-Fi. So,
all right. Well, just in case I'm curious of ever watching these in the future, what are some players I may have missed out on the past? Who are some former players that are maybe noteworthy? I know that common player or common fan has probably never heard of some of these guys, but who are some people that you were able to find?
Yeah, I didn't go into into their past players. I just looked at their current players just to see like where the guys came from, just because I figured that would be a pretty good sense, because the club hasn't been around for very long, as we mentioned, and they've been successful. It's not like they're in like a trough now, and it's not like they're in like some insane. Well, it is kind of insane that they've won 4 of the last. One of those. Yeah, 4 of the 3 of the last 4, and then they won. And they were promoted the year before that. So, it's not like they have a history of like losing. Although I guess no notable players would probably come out of a losing period. So, one thing I initially thought that the non-Filipino nationals would be their big name. So that's who I looked at first. And they're only allowed 4 non-Filipino nationals on their team. It seems like it's pretty easy to get Filipino nationality, though. Maybe not for like non-footballers, but it seems like a lot of footballers have, like, I'm going through their list, and like, a lot of people were born in other countries, and they've been nationalized. And some of them, like one of them is like, and I'll just talk about him first since I'm talking about it. So Omid Nazari, he played for Malmo. So Malmo comes up again. I saw that name and I was like, no, surely it's not that guy. And then I looked at his appearances, and there may have been another Nazari that played with Malmo. Because he played, this Omid guy, he played in like 2010, 2011. And I was pretty sure there was a guy that played after that for Malmo. So maybe they're brothers or something. I mean, how many Nazaris can there be in Malmo? Probably not a ton. But so I saw that, and he's made 5 appearances with the Iranian national team. And so he's of Iranian descent, but born in, actually I don't remember if he was born in Sweden or if he was born in Iran. But anyway, lived in Sweden for much of his life, has like no connections to the Philippines other than like he decided to go there and play football, and he got nationalized. So when I was first looking at the list, I was only looking at the non-Filipino players, and I didn't pick up on his name. And then I started digging into them, and I was like, well, actually, he's Filipino. It doesn't make any sense. But I guess he's been there long enough that he was able to get citizenship. Another guy, I'm not going in order, and so I'm going to confuse you a bit. But Roland.
I want to stop you just because I did some digging while you're doing. There was another Nazari that played for Malmo from 2011 to 2015.
Yeah, that guy I think is probably a bigger deal than this guy.
Who is also Filipino, but I can't. Yep, his brother Omid. So they are brothers. Good call.
So wait, but they are. So the other guy, they both moved to the Philippines?
I don't know. This one just says he's a Filipino footballer who plays defensive midfielder for the Philippines. So
what club team does he play for?
Last he was at IFK.
It was a Sweden team.
Marienheim or Marinham, but now he's at Ratchaburi somewhere.
So actually, that IFK something, that's probably a Finnish club.
Ratchaburi is in Thai.
But what's the IFK? Is that a Finnish or a Swedish club?
It is the capital of the Åland Islands and plays in the Finnish Premier Division.
There we go. Yeah, there's an IFK, I'm pretty sure, that plays in Sweden. But I didn't recognize that second word. So
this one, Amin played in the Swedish youth levels, but then he made his national appearance with the Philippines. So
don't know how that happened, but probably his brother was like, "Hey, they'll nationalize you if you say you want to play for them." I'm just guessing, but I think that's probably how that went down.
All right. We're digressing.
So the next guy I wanted to mention, because I was talking about people that were not born there, was Roland Mueller, which does not sound like a Filipino name at all. It sounds like a German name, which is where he was born. And then he played at some German clubs and then finally found his way to the Philippines. And that's actually like a common story for a lot of these guys that they played in the U.S., they played in Spain, and they bounced around. And they find themselves in the Philippines for whatever reason. I didn't dig into the connections. This guy, he looks like he might be of Filipino descent, but maybe his mom married a guy named Mueller. I'm not real sure what happened there. I didn't dig into it too much, but he's not like a pale skinned German looking dude. So,
no,
don't know.
He's not. Definitely looks Filipino.
Yeah.
His hometown club is in Cologne. So.
Right, exactly. And he came through the youth division at Cologne. So, I don't know what happened there. But yeah, so I kind of stopped writing down names because the stories were all kind of they're similar in their own sort of like journeyman way, eventually finding their way to the Philippines. Martin Stubble, who played in the MLS for a few different teams, and he's made 39 appearances for the Filipino national team. A lot of these guys, have made a few appearances, so they're not like stars, the Filipino national team. And like 39 appearances might not sound like a whole lot when you compare them to like teams that go deep in their continental tournaments, so they're playing a lot of games, the U.S. national team, Mexican national team, obviously teams that go far in the World Cup, you're going to rack up appearances that way. But when you realize that, the Philippines was not, up until they expanded the Asian Cup, they weren't likely to make the Asian Cup at all. I mean, of course they have qualifiers, but it's hard to rack up games when your team's not playing in tournaments. So 39 appearances to me is quite impressive. And so another guy with some U.S. connections was Amani Adunaldo. Again, it's just the same story for a lot of these guys. So if you want to look at the roster, you'll probably see a lot of clubs that you might recognize. And, I looked at the Spanish nationals that they had. Manuel Herrera Lopez in Bienvenido Moranon. And they bounced around the Spanish league. I didn't really see anything that stood out to me. We've got one guy that certainly did, and I'm going to talk about him in a second. And then Blake Powell is Australian. He bounced around the A-League, hasn't made appearances for the Australian national team. Maybe they'll nationalize him and he'll start playing for the Filipino national team. I don't know. So the one guy who was actually pretty notable that I saw, there might be others, but that I saw he just left the club. So he played for the 2018 winning side of the league, and then he moved on. He won a Copa del Rey with Betis. He played at Napoli. I mean, granted, I think he only made like 2 appearances for Napoli, but still, I mean, like, it's Napoli. It's not like Napoli B that he's making those 2 appearances for. So I was pretty impressed with that. So that was the one guy that I saw that I was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. So yeah, the players, I think, if you're interested in these sort of like journeyman players and seeing where people land, I would definitely go through the list because I'm sure they've got a lot of stories to tell, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, no, it's interesting to see, because if you would have before this, I would have thought that most of these guys were they stayed local, maybe in Southern Asia, maybe Australia, and they just kind of stayed in that general area. Yeah. Unless there was a lot of money involved, like you're seeing now in China. And I would have assumed that that's not what's happening in the Philippines. So they're probably just got a bunch of more local players. But the fact that they have some Spanish nationals bouncing around and some Australia, well, I already said Australia, but the fact that you have people who are playing in Europe who are choosing to go this direction at some point in their career is pretty fascinating.
Yeah. My guess is that the fact that they're winning the league and they're getting into the Asian competitions, that's putting themselves in the shop window. They've got that. So as long as they continue to win the league, then I think they'll continue to get players that are still trying to make it big.
Yep, sounds good. So we talked a lot about the past successes of the leagues. Was there anything else you wanted to add there about their past successes or any failures?
I mean, they've won some cups too. So there was this. They started out. They were in the PFF National Men's Club Championship before they moved into the more professional league, the United Football League division. And again, then it changed the Philippines Football League, and it has changed again for 2019. Like, that league folded. There's a new one, but the club has entered. So. It's going to be, if you want to look into the club history, it's going to be confusing because there's a lot of different things and it's maybe the same thing with the cups in the Philippines. I don't know, but I've mentioned too that their Asian Cup. I mean, we talked about this last week. Like, what is success? Is winning the Europa League success, or is making it far in the Champions League? That was the example we used last week. And I think success has to be like sort of like looked at also in the context. You know, this is a Filipino team, not a huge football tradition there, not a lot of money in the game there, you know, not in comparison to like a Japan or a China. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of money being spent to bring these players in, but there used to be this thing called the AFC President's Club Cup, which they entered in 2014. I don't know anything about that. It may be one of the same tournaments that exists now, and they just changed the name. I don't know. So in 2015, 2016, 2017, they were in the AFC Cup, which I already mentioned was their NIT or like their Europa League, their Copa Sudamericana. Don't think we have one of those in CONCACAF, a second tier league. It's new if we do have it.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah. So in 2017, they started. Well, I guess it's been a progression. So they were in the playoff round in 2015, and they made it into the group stage, and then they made it to the round of 16 in 2016. 2017, they made it to the interzone playoff semifinal, which I don't know what that means. Interzone, where this
it's probably divided up as you have to win like your region, and then
like the thing about it is it's not Southeast Asian. The team they played in those semifinals is from Tajikistan. So I don't. Yeah, I mean, but if they do it like the NCAA, where like, oh, you're from the South, but you're going to play from the North. Maybe the divisions don't have. I don't know. Maybe they seed the teams after the group stage, because there's a group stage. So then I don't know. I misread this. It's an interzone playoff. So they won the Southeast Asian division of the NIT. I'm just going to call it the NIT. So yeah, they played a team from Malaysia and then a team from I think that's Singapore. I wish I could hover over these flags. Yeah, I can't hover over the flags. Yeah, Malaysia. I knew the Malaysian one, but that's Singapore. So they played a Singaporean team in the Southeast Asian final, and then they played this team from Tajikistan. They lost to the team from Tajikistan. That was in 2017. So in 2018 is when I think they sort of announced themselves to the English-speaking world, I guess, to a large extent, because they beat the Brisbane Roar, the champions of Australia, 3-2. And it's not a home and away. They did home and away other years, but for whatever reason in 2018 they stopped doing the home and away. I'm not really sure what was going on there, or maybe like in the Philippines they couldn't do home legs, so they just played a one leg. I'm not really sure. I'd have to look into and that was not the NIT. That's the AFC Champions League. That's one reason I wanted to call it the NIT, because there's the AFC Cup and then there's the AFC Champions League. So it's a little bit confusing if you don't keep the jargon right. But yeah, so that was in the Champions League, which was the first time they'd ever been in the Champions League proper. I don't know if they expanded it or if they were just, because of their success in the AFC Cup, they got a higher coefficient, which means that maybe they didn't have to go into the playoff. Maybe they went straight into the group stage. I don't know. But they beat the Brisbane Roar, which was a huge deal for people. A lot of people started to take notice, like this team is legit. But they lost to a Chinese team in the next round. So it is what it is. But they do just like in the UEFA Champions League, where if you lose at a certain place in the AFC Champions League, you drop in to the AFC Cup. And so then they made it again to the Southeast Asian final. They played the same team that they played in the Southeast Asian final from Singapore in 2017. Home United is their name, but they actually lost I don't really know. Oh, that's the aggregate score. I wasn't sure what they had that time. So they lost this time, and then they're out. But they are set for the 2019 AFC Champions League. It's not one of these like weird things that crosses years. They are going up against Yangon United, which is a team that they've played before, which is Myanmar, and. Oh, maybe I'm wrong about this now that I'm looking at this again. Now I'm confused. You know what? Just forget everything I said about the NIT because they're in both. Maybe it's like the okay. You know what? I'm just gonna click on this. I thought that's what it was, but apparently it's not. Annual international association competition between domestic clubs run by Asian Football Confederation. How is that different than the Asian Champions League? You know what? I don't even care. There's 2 cups. Figure it out if you care.
If you are this involved and you are this interested, you can do the research.
Yeah. There's 2 of them and they're in both of them. I guess. Yeah, I don't know. There's also this thing called there's the Singapore Cup, which they've gotten invited to. They're not in Singapore, but they've gotten invited to that. Just like South American, not all the teams in the South American in their country competition are actually from South America. It's been like Japan and Mexico a lot of times. The U.S. has been down there. This time I think it's like Qatar and like it's a couple of like Middle Eastern teams, I believe this time, but we're kind of straying from the topic at hand. But yeah, so oh no, somewhere I picked up that the AFC Cup was the Asian secondary club football tournament. So I don't know why they're in both. They haven't played a game in either one of them. They didn't go from one to the other.
Well, from what I could tell, they were in the AFC Champions League, and they made it to the playoff round of that. They beat the Brisbane Roar in the preliminary round, and then they moved to the playoff round and lost to a Chinese team.
Yeah, that was in 2018, though.
Yes, I'm looking at 2018, and then they probably after that went to the 2010 AFC Cup because they dropped down to the next competition, kind of like you do from the Champions League down to the Europa.
So you're thinking the years are offset by one?
No, because
they were in both of them in 2018, and they're in both of them in 2019, and they haven't played a game in either one of them in 2019.
Yeah, no, that might be
or Wikipedia is not updated.
Yeah, that might be weird on the 2019 side.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on 2019. So if you know more about Asian football than we do, just tell us because we're going to probably do other Asian teams and we're probably going to also be confused. It doesn't help that they changed the names of things. I mean, I know that was like mostly the Philippines, but yeah, and it is, I don't know. So they were or are in both for 2019.
Yeah. All right.
So,
okay. So
to be continued.
Yeah, I guess so.
I didn't find any derbies. I was like, I kind of forgot to do that, but they haven't like been around long enough to have like.
Yeah.
I mean, unless there's just like a. So yeah, leave it in the comments down there if there's any derbies that I just kind of just overlooked. I didn't write any down. Wikipedia didn't tell me there were derbies. So
okay. Well, anything that we have covered more than I thought we would about this club. Is there anything else that is on your heartstrings to let out about this? Maybe this club or looking into this club, what it's taught you?
No, I mean, well, I think that I have never really dived into the club side of Asian football. I mean, I knew that like, China was spending a lot of money and that like they've been good and stuff like that. So I think a lot of it was just like me sort of like digging around and sort of figuring things out with that. So that's pretty much it.
All right. Sounds good. Do you want to close us out like you normally do?
Yeah. So this has been another club. No. I forgot the world part. I was like, I know that's not right. World Club of the Week. I can't just forget everything that I said. Clear. I don't even know the name of my own show. So World Club of the Week. We'll be back to say other stupid things next week. Actually, we'll actually know things about the club that we're doing next week. So maybe it won't be so ridiculous. But, but definitely join us. We have a special guest. What's the word? I can't word today. An expert. That's the word.
Sure. Go
I guess expert. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say the whole time. Expert. Oh, I meant to say this at the beginning, but the whole like words thing. I probably completed the most, well, not the most, like top 5 grueling physical activities I've ever participated in this morning. So yeah. I'm pretty tired.
I was about to say that'll weigh on you.
Yeah. So next week I won't do that, and I'll be smart again.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.